What's up, folks? Spiderfly back again on the World Wide Web. I could be out looking for a job, but instead I'm right here. I'm right here with you. Getting deeper into the book. We're almost done this series, low-key. There's only like a few more videos left to do before we can move on to new, exciting content. But yeah, for the time being, we just got to get through this. Still finding typos. Boo! Terrible book. Sucks awfully. If editing services were not $5,000, then maybe we could have gone without them. But I think I can stomach one or two. Misspell the yours more than I can stomach being out all of my money. So, okay, in this chapter, we're getting into Section X, Section 10, The Rat of Main Street. What is that? It's like the Wolf of Wall Street. You get it. You get the idea. This is your chapter all about making money, getting paid. What are the different various activities you can do, various crimes you can engage in to make a little money on the side and make it through to the end of the week. So the chapter opens up with a little short story. A day in the life of a ghetto rat. Just kind of goes through an example of what a low-level mission might look like, what kind of a session of gameplay could entail, and then it gets straight into it. So we'll start really quick just by reading off the art of the job. Quick cash and an even quicker death. This is the life of the gun dog. Desperate mercenaries willing to do whatever it takes to make rent. Gun dogs find themselves doing all kinds of unsavory deeds for even less savory clientele. While the types of jobs are constantly changing, those involved have come up with 3 distinct categories of work. So before we get into what those different categories are, I kind of tend to divide my campaigns into 3 kind of different categories of their own. I find there's 3 main ways to play Geto Rats, and you can use the system, reskin it, modify it to run pretty much whatever. I've run fantasy games, I've run like police department simulator games, I've run story-driven kind of mystery narrative games. But when you're running in the world of Geto Rats with the Geto Rats system, I find there's kind of, three different ways to play. The first one, and this is one of the ones I probably do the least often. I find it's better for like one-shots and kind of couple session campaigns. This is what we call a Feedlands run. This is where it is pretty much just a pure survival game. You are out in the middle of nowhere. There might be a few scattered settlements or villages around, but 90% of the game you are just wandering around, kind of a hex crawl, open map, salvaging for supplies, fighting monsters. You'll usually have some kind of overarching objective, but it's kind of more of like a survival focused, like where are we going to get food, where are we going to get water, we have to set up camp, fortify this building, loot this dungeon kind of thing. I just naturally don't usually gravitate towards games like that. You can very much do it, especially with the new kind of improved systems you see in the expansion and stuff like that. Makes it a lot easier to run. I find they're fun as like a palate cleanser between bigger campaigns. They are also very, very difficult. They're gonna kind of naturally be sort of a meat grinder, which, you know, you're gonna go through. If you just want to have fun, have some drinks, eat some chips, watch your characters die, and just kind of mess around. Fun to do with that. The next one is the most common. We call this the Fixer campaign or the Gundog campaign. And this is where the party essentially plays as a ragtag band of mercenaries generally. It's going to be a lot more combat, mission by mission focused. Every session might be a new quest or a new couple quests. You're taking on jobs from underworld figures. You're making money mission by mission, just trying to get ahead, get new equipment, and stay alive. these are like kind of the easiest to play. They're kind of the best like introduction to the world because it's constantly feeding you kind of stuff to do. You're interacting with all kind of the more basic systems, like just the combat and the skill checks and things like that. Not that combat is basic. And just kind of focusing on upgrading your own character and just making it to the next session, right? The third one that is more structured is, we'll call this like the gang run, the hula gang run. This is where all the members of the party are members of the same gang, either a gang that the party is founded or that they are members of, and the whole campaign becomes about running and expanding that gang. So anytime a character dies or goes to prison, you rejoin as just a new, fresh-faced member of the crew. You're recruiting NPCs to work for you. You're making contacts so that you can make more money in the underworld, suppliers, maybe inns with different mob figures or fixers and stuff like that. You're going in long-term, all or nothing kind of wars against other gangs. And you're just trying to survive and try to see your organization grow and thrive. These are the most complicated campaigns to run because you are engaging with you're engaging with like every single system, and you're also usually very underpowered. Like you're starting maybe at a lower level, your access is to less equipment and stuff like that. And you're managing a whole organization. It's not just your party, right? But generally I find these have the best kind of arcs. You see NPCs that start off as recruits that end up being the leader of the group as your guys are dying and rejoining as, junior members again. You've got, rivalries that will span the entire campaign between members of different groups. Maybe you've been in combat with the same guy dozens of times. He's killed some of your friends, you've killed some of his. And it just leads to these kind of great character moments. And then there's also campaigns where I'll just make a sandbox and say, you guys can do whatever you want. You can be any kind of character. You can do whatever. Those are fun too, but that's less of a structured thing. So the game kind of assumes, obviously, that you're going to be doing crime, but also that, mercenary work is a big part of the kind of economy of the zone. I think it's kind of interesting, like, gun dogs would be looked at kind of the same way cattlemen or like cowboys would have been looked at in the Old West, or, I kind of think of them as like maybe how we would look at drug dealers now, is like they really like to hype themselves up as being like these big, cowboy figures, right? Like cattlemen used to go drinking in bars and flashing their guns and being, oh, we're cowboys, it's crazy out here in the Old West, and never knew they just were ranch hands basically. But they really enjoyed that reputation they had, right, as these kind of weird anti-hero, folk heroes kind of. And we kind of see that with the way we can look at drug dealers now as like being very over-celebrated in media and stuff like that. But the reality is, if you've met a lot of drug dealers, they're either regular people or just kind of dysfunctional people. No shade on my drug dealer friends or anything, but you know what I mean, right? It's not quite as glamorous as a lot of movies and stuff make it out to be. And I think that's kind of interesting that in the zone, this is a world where things are so bad, things are so messed up, that it's just an accepted thing that in your community, there's going to be just guys who commit crimes for money, that kill people for money. And they're not high-end Agent 47 type hitmen. These are just regular guys who were like, well, I can't get a job and, I'm sick of having no money, so I'm going to steal a gun and I'm just going to start shooting people for cash, right? And that would be seen as a valid, semi-valid career, right? So anyway, the art of the job, the 3 missions we've been talking about. Sorry, I got it was a bit of a side note. We'll get back to it. When it comes to mercenary work, there's going to be a bunch of different things you can do, right? Jobs are going to come in all shapes and sizes, all different variety. That's all well and good. But generally, they're divided into 3 categories. The first one is the kick job. A kick job is just a simple gig, no nonsense, not that complicated. Go to the place, do the thing, get paid, right? The name kind of comes from the idea of like all the prep you have to do for a mission like this is just kicking in the door. You go to the place, you kick in the door, maybe you shoot a couple people, easy as pie. Kick jobs are usually just going to pay you not a whole lot. Sometimes they'll pay so little it's not even worth bringing a full party to do it. So sometimes, you know, if you're splitting up the payday and stuff like that, maybe your pin gives you a job and you just pawn it off to a party member and just take your cut off of it as like a finder's fee. Maybe you recruit one NPC to go do it. Maybe you go do this side job while everyone else is engaging with their other hustles and stuff like that. But a kick job is simple, it's to the point, not a lot of prep. It is not going to pay you more than $5,000. It's probably going to be less than that almost every time. Who knows, might be different, but a kick job is just a simple job. No one's really going to remember. It's just to make you rent money and maybe patch up your gear. The next is patchwork. Patchwork is called that because it's sort of seen as like a patch on your jacket, you know, your scout's badge kind of thing. A patch job is any kind of job that people are going to actually remember. So anybody can do a kick job. Anybody will do a kick job, you know what I mean? A lot of people want to be gun dogs and they start off and they're just doing grunt work. It's kind of like in Naruto, the ninja mission rankings where it's like, oh, we're rescuing cats again, really? You know, anybody can do that. Everyone wants to be the cool ninja cowboy. Everyone has to start off with the cat rescue job. When you have built enough of a reputation for yourself or have made enough contacts, you're going to be offered an actual job, a real mission, patchwork. And whether you succeed or fail, people are going to remember how you handled this job. If you fail your first patch job, you probably won't get another for a while. If you do it goes off super smooth, no problems, no complications, you can expect to be hearing back from that pin, right? That's kind of the idea of patchwork. It can pay any amount. I mean, here it says usually between 5 to 30,000. It can be kind of wherever. Sometimes you might be getting paid just in loot. Like they might say, hey, you can take whatever you find there, you can keep, but you know, take care of this or bring back this one item or kill this one person, whatever. But a patchwork is like an actual real mission. You might want to do some prep for it. You're going to want to bring a team in, and you're going to want to do well. The last one is a suicide run. The suicide run is the job to end all jobs. It's the job you're most likely not going to come back from, and it's the job you probably shouldn't have taken in the first place, but the payday was just too tempting. A patch job is a job that's going to define your criminal career, that people are going to remember, right? A real professional gun dog might have like a dozen patch jobs in their whole career before they retire or move on, right? A lot of people don't last very long in that business, and the people that do usually are not very bright. Usually want to get in, make your money, and get out as fast as possible. The suicide run is the job that gives you that chance, right? Most likely you'll die. Most likely the job fails. Most likely everyone involved gets caught and goes down. But if even one of you makes it out, that could be it. You could have accomplished everything you could have ever hoped to. You could start a new life, or at the very least get out of the game, right? The suicide run is that big last job, the job to end all jobs. Take it or leave it. It's probably a better idea to pass up on them, but hey, right? Who can resist? So the next part talks about a pin. What is a pin? It's a word that gets thrown around a lot. The pin is, they're kind of defined as, on the cork board, right? All the strings lead back to the center with the pin. The pin is the guy who knows a guy. The pin is the big boss, the big contact, right? In Shadowrun, they might call him like Mr. Johnson or whatever. In Cyberpunk, they might call him a fixer. In this game, they kind of use the word fixer interchangeably with a mercenary or with the person calling the shots. But the pin is the guy who knows everybody, they have all the connections, they get all the jobs, and they dole out the missions to lowly mercs like you, just trying to get a little bit of money, right? This is the guy who spends all his time at the lounge booth of a nightclub, or driving around the zone, picking you up with his masked men and in his limousine with the tinted windows, right? This is the guy giving you the work. There's usually a lot of different pins at all different levels. You've got low-level pins who are more like kind of community godfathers. You've got high-level pins with the corporate and the government contacts. You've got the shadier pins who are in with the big criminal organizations. It doesn't really matter. The thing with a pin is they are a middleman. They usually have their own kind of networks. Some of them might be bigger in smuggling rackets, and so if you need to get to a part of the city or move, items throughout the city, they might be the person to call. They might have access to weapons you can buy. They might have access to money laundering or to hideouts, or who knows, right? It doesn't really matter. But your pin is going to be your lifeline, and if you want to someday become a pin, very much a good idea. That's kind of the end game for a lot of mercenaries, is either to start a front business or do enough merc work that they can eventually become the guy giving out the jobs. Some people run teams or crews, right? There are pins. There are also geists. A geist is specifically a corporate middleman. They kind of act as a pin, but they have actual ties and loyalties to a specific corporation. Pins are usually neutral. They'll typically have their kind of affiliations or their contacts in certain places, and they might not want to turn on them, but generally they try to stay out of any real conflict. A geist is sort of like the handler. They are not Usually they have some kind of no-show job within the corporation. The corporation kind of sponsors them and gives them money, and in exchange they might hire a pin to go do work. They might arrange for a team to do it themselves, but they're kind of just a barrier, a middleman between a corporation and the underworld, whereas a pin is kind of an underworld figure that just tries their best not to get their hands dirty. So when you get over here, we've got sort of a mission generator. This is just, if you're having trouble coming up with the jobs, it's very, very vague. I'll roll one up as an example. So the rating, 11, patchwork. So this is a patch job. This is, an actual mission. It'll be kind of challenging. Your employer, that's a 3. Is a ghost. Oh, interesting. So you've been contacted by like a spirit, possibly? Maybe a ghost is haunting you and wants you to do this job. Who knows, right? Maybe it's a cultist. Could be anything. 6. You were doing the job against a church or a cult. So maybe the ghost of a person killed in an occult sacrifice wants you to raid their compound, and as payment, they know that there are, valuables. All the valuables of the people killed by the cult are kept in a big vault in a sacrificial chamber. So you might get a ton of good loot if you take on this cult, right? Your contact, 4, is a pin contract. Not really sure how that would work with your employer being a ghost. Maybe you could take ghost as being like a nobody. Oh no, a nobody is a category. So who knows, maybe the contact doesn't make sense for this. Maybe it doesn't make sense that a pin is like, I was communing with spirits. But maybe it does. Maybe your pin is like a wizard. And he's like, I had a vision of a vengeful spirit, and he wants us to do this job, right? Could be, who knows? We're rolling location. 4 is, communities. So this is within the walls of the city. A cult is operating, sacrificing people, and you need to raid their compound in the city. That could be crazy, right? That could be a whole, who knows, right? Objective, deliver cargo. So maybe this whole thing was the ghost died. Maybe the ghost was a member of the cult, right? And they want their medallion returned back to the cult compound, but maybe the patch job part of it is that you have to get an enchanted item through the wall to the cult. And then the catch is betrayal. The cult doesn't want to pay you and sells you out. Who knows, right? So you can ignore some of those rules, you can re-roll them as you want, but the idea is it just gives you like random context clues to figure it out. I don't usually use generators, but you know, this can help if it's your first session and you're trying to come up with a mission, you can't come up with anything, or even just for ideas. There's an example mission here. But yeah, now that we've got that out of the way, we can get into the real meat of this chapter, and that is hustles. Okay, so your muscles are kind of like your side activities. This is how you generate kind of passive income. Depending on the kind of build you're going for, the campaign you're doing, this might be the majority of what you're doing, in which case I'll get into how I run that if it's a much more focused part of the game. Alternatively, though, it's just something to do if you've got one of those sessions where, like, maybe the job is in 3 days and we need to generate a bit of money to save up to get some good equipment, or maybe the rest of the party's doing something and I'm not really involved, so maybe I can control an NPC during that combat, but my character is going to be off doing this thing. During a, like we said before, like a gang run, this is going to be how you make almost all of your money, is off the various side hustles and stuff like that. So yeah, it's going to depend campaign to campaign. If you don't like downtime activities, don't worry about them that much. But this is how you're going to make a lot of just fast cash. So all of them are going to be different. They're all going to have their different quirks and sub-rules. But the general rule is when you're doing a hustle, you're rolling 1d6 with an extra 1d6 for every point in the relevant stat. And then if you control a territory, you will also be adding 1d6 equal to the wealth of that neighborhood. There's different conflicting rules in the different books and stuff like that. You can go with whatever makes most sense. I prefer the version where you just roll your max pool and then add wealth. If you want to do a game that's a lot more pared down, you can have it where the wealth is the maximum amount of dice you can roll. It's kind of up to you. It depends. It's up to how you run it. Right now I'm running it where you roll your max pool, add the wealth of the neighborhood if you control the territory, and then if the territory, there's too much competition, or maybe there's not a demand for your services, you can say lose 2 dice, you can say you're rolling half your dice pool, you could say, you know, you get an extra d6 because you're doing this hustle on a day where it would make sense to do it, right? It's completely up to you as the zone master to set the parameters. If anyone tries to bully you about it or complain about how they're not getting the most of their dice, sucks to be them. They can run their own game. But yeah, so one of the first ones here is the Give Me the Loot section, about stealing. This is where you get swag. Swag is just ambiguous stolen goods that you can fence. There's a table for the value. So Manic at the Klepto, that is pickpocketing. So pickpocketing is rolling 1d6 plus 1d6 for every point in speed or reflexes. So let's say we've got 4 reflexes. That's our highest stat. We're rolling 5d6. And hustles take up an amount of time. As an example for Manic at the Klepto, it doesn't say how long it takes for you to pickpockets. Generally, you want to set your own parameter. So I run it as every hustle takes 6 hours in my games. You could run it where every hustle takes 1 hour. I've done it. It makes it so you can make way too much money. You can run it where every hustle takes 6 hours. You can run it where every hustle takes 12 hours. You can run it where, you know, every hustle doesn't take that long, but you can only do it once per day or twice per day or whatever makes sense. General rule of thumb, 6 hours for what we call a shift, which is just doing your hustle for 6 hours. You can do multiple shifts, you can do overnight shifts and stuff like that. But yeah, let's roll for this. So on this one, we have to call our results. So we will call odds or evens. On a success, we get 1 swag. And on a fail, we take half of a heat. So round it up. So we're rolling 5d6. We're going to call tails, obviously. And that was bad. So we got 1 swag out of 6 hours of work. That's worth roughly $100 to the fence. Fence might give us like $50 for it. And we've taken a total of 2 heat. So maybe we stole, I don't know, a gold pen off of an off-duty cop and got chased around. Who knows, right? We could try again for another 6 hours, calling tails, and I rolled only even numbers, so I've just taken 3 heat and gotten absolutely nothing, right? That's not very good. Things like picking pockets that are more luck-based, the bigger your dice pool doesn't necessarily mean the better. Oh, and let's say maybe we're picking pockets in a really nice area and no one else is doing that. So maybe we get an extra 3 dice from the wealth bonus, right? Calling odds. And we've actually gotten a little bit more. So now we've taken 1 heat and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 swag, which we can combine to get a Q3 swag, and then I think we also get a Q1. So that's like $900 worth of stolen goods we've got. We could also just cash it in as cash. So maybe we got just $300 cash picking pockets. Not bad, right? The next one here, we've got Thief's Theme. So this is the one where you do break and enters, breaking into people's houses and taking their stuff. So we're going to roll reflexes or street smarts. Let's say we've got 4 reflexes, right, as established. So that's a 5 plus 4. We failed. That took up 12 hours. We take 2 heat and 1 infamy for failing to break into someone's house. Alternatively, this was an 11. So now we roll. We've got 6 swag and 1 heat. We broke in, we got some stuff. When it comes to hustles like this, if you are doing kind of a time jump, or if you want it just as a side thing of like, what are you doing while this is going on? Can I roll to break into 2 houses? Cool, do that. If it's going to be a big focus of the game, like if this person's like, my character's whole thing is I do home invasions, I'm really good at breaking into houses and taking stuff, you have to introduce complications. You can use infamy actions, heat actions, those totally work. But you can also just be like, instead of just rolling for this, we're actually going to play out this happening. That is also absolutely fine to do that. That's usually going to be more fun and more interesting. Stuff like that, these rules are just to have a rough framework. But if you say you're breaking into a house in a poor area, so it's going to be D3 for swag, not D6, absolutely fine. If you're going to say you can't find swag above quality 3 in this area, fine. If you're going to make them actually play it out and being like, okay, in the room you see a jewelry box, you see a safe under the bed, there's also a closet with clothes, but you hear them humming and singing in the kitchen. Roll a stealth check. What do you want to do? That's also fine, and here you get into the next one, which is the big score, the actual robberies. This one is like, it says you can spend show to know a guy to rob. So maybe you drop 2 show on just a low-level drug dealer you met one time, and you know where his apartment is, and the party's like, we need a bit of quick cash, let's just go rob this guy's house. You could do way more than that, but that's kind of the idea of that one. Shellfish in a barrel, which is where you're doing things like armored car robberies, boat heists. We do a lot of boat heists in my games. I don't know why, I just always end up making quest lines that are about boarding and robbing boats. I guess I like pirates, I don't know. We had one of my favorite heists in the game was an armored car robbery where they were making off. It was like a truck with a freezer in the back, and it was full of real, like, actual beef, and they were stealing it for this restaurant owner who paid them like a ton of money for hijacking the truck and parking it, disabling the GPS and offloading the beef, right? You can do all sorts of cool things. These are usually going to be actually played out. And it says here, maybe you can buy data to find out about the heist. Maybe you have a pin, hire you for it, or maybe you go to a pin or a fence and are like, hey, if you can find this thing, I'll steal it for you. Maybe you spend show and you heard a worker at the bar talk about, oh yeah, I have to run this stupid truck full of diamonds through the zone. Oh, I hate my job, right? Any of that's fine. It gives you dice pools for how much loot. You can kind of ignore that. Like, if you need a dice pool for what the reward is, that's fine. But, you know, you get to come up with it as the zone master at the end of the day. Big bucks is robbing underground casinos, banks, corporate data centers. That's going to be crazy. And then the important thing it says here when you're stealing is, you know, when you're fencing stuff, you're going to have to buy a fence as a contact, right, with Cho and that kind of thing. Or a pin or whatever. But your fence is not going to give you full value for whatever you steal, right? So maybe you stole $100,000 worth of jewels. That's awesome. Your fence might give you 40. They might give you 30, right? Because who else are you going to go to when you have $100,000 worth of jewels? They know when they have you kind of in a tight spot, and so they're going to pay you whatever they feel like. And this is the important thing as the zone master. If your person is running side hustles, or one of your players, is running side hustles, and they're like, hey, so I managed to get Q6 swag with this disgusting perk build I have, so I actually have like $40,000 worth of stolen goods I just made, and your jaw drops, and you go, what, how? Well, did you take heat at least? And they're like, no, I have the thing where I take half heat -1, so I've actually taken no heat at all, and I just made $40,000, and it's taken me 2 in-game days. Right? Just rolling dice. This is kind of where you get to be like, okay, the fence is going to give you $5,000 for it. Nice job. And they're going to go, what are you going to do with me? Right? Same thing. Pay data is basically the thief thing, but instead of swag, you are getting pay data. You are essentially hacking various devices. You can do like identity theft, you can do crypto mining, you can do credit card fraud, you can just run a data farm. There's also confidence kills, which is being a con man or con woman, I suppose, or con person even. This one is where you can find out about the location of valuable goods or of important data by kind of getting close to somebody and talking to them. You can also use it to farm Cho, and you can kind of reskin it as going out and gathering information. The downside is you take a lot of infamy if you fail. Again, you know, how much time it takes, how often you can do it, what the rewards are, up to the zone master, really. Oh, you've got gambling. Oh, you better believe we do a lot of gambling at my games. We do sports betting all the time. We do the slot machines. We do the roulette wheel. My party's always at the casino. You best believe they are always at the casino, losing all their money. It is fantastic. Great way to make Cho. Extortion, these are just various rackets you can do. So one of them here is a gambling den. So you buy up a gambling den, get it started, generate 1d6 equal to the wealth of the neighborhood. So let's say we're in wealth 4, gambling den gets 4. On an even number, they generate money times the result. On an odd number, they lose money times the result. So we're going to say odds or evens. We're going to call odds. So we'll call odds. So on this, we've made a total of, on here it says $250 times the result. Oh, which is why even number is the, okay, so we had to call evens, my bad. Because then odds would be less money. So it's 1,500 and then 1,000. So we've made 2,500 minus 2,500. We make the exact same amount? Oh yeah, we did. So we've paid out and made equal amounts of money. We've made no profit. And that's the thing with a lot of the gambling ones, they don't always turn a profit. You need your card sharks who do various things, heat, whatever. You're gonna notice not all of these make a lot of sense. We're gonna get into that at the end. I'm just running through these. There's blood running. This is where you can kidnap people and perform surgery on them and take their organs and resell them. And there's, okay. Now we get into, over here it's called dogging dope. This is the, these are the in-depth rules for how to sell drugs in Geto Ratz. I was worried my publisher wouldn't let me publish the book because of this. They didn't care. They left it in, typos and all. It's for me to deal with. So this one is a bit more complicated. I have some players that hate these mechanics and do not find them fun at all and don't want to play with them. I have players who don't want to do anything but this. It's really going to depend on your players. If you're doing the gang run, this is 90% of what you're doing. So I will use the market generator. So I'm going to pull up the handy dandy black market generator. So what this does is it is a series of tables that randomly generate the prices of all the things in the game. In this case, it's going to be handy if you are doing a drug run. So let's say we've got Crash, we've got Jag, right? Are you having fun yet? Are you having fun yet? Whatever, I'll just do it on here. So Crash is currently down, which means the price is not as valuable. That's too bad. Sometimes you're not going to turn a profit if you're not careful. So let's just say for the purpose of the argument, I've got 4 points in Street Smarts. So I get 1d6 plus 4d6. And let's say also for the purpose of the argument, I actually control a part of this territory. You measure control with population. We'll get into that at the end of the chapter. But the neighborhood is a wealth of 2, so I get 2 extra dice, and I want to sell my Crash. So I'm not going to count exactly how much Crash I have. We're just going to say I've got a lot, maybe a few ounces, and I'm trying to sell it. So I'm going to go hit a 6-hour shift selling. So this is on a D3. Those are 2 3s, 3 2s, 2 1s. So the unit, so it's a D3. A 1 on a D3 is a unit. A 2 on a D3 is a gram. And a 3 on a D3 is 3.5 grams, or an eighth. So I've got 2 units. Those are selling for $12 a piece. I've got 3 grams. Those are currently selling for $30 a piece. And then I've got 2 eighths. Those are currently selling for $75 a piece. So I have made $264, right? We're not done the math yet. I'll just go step by step. So I've made $264. Not great. It's down. It's at like 60% of its normal value, but it is what it is. I need the cash, right? Now, let's say I wanted to do it for 3 shifts. I could re-roll every time if I wanted to be tedious, or I can just multiply it by 3. So I've made $792. But now we have to track how much I've actually sold. So a unit is 0.25. So I've sold half a gram, plus 3 grams, plus 3.5, and then plus 3.5 again. So in the first shift, I sold 10.5 grams. Multiply that by 3 for the amount of shifts. I've sold I've sold 31.5 grams. And if I multiply that by 4, I've sold 126 units or doses, and I've made a little over $700. Not great, not the worst, right? But that's kind of the basic idea behind it. You can overcomplicate it. You can hire people to sell on your behalf. You're buying the product. You're, getting contacts to source it for you. There's a lot of levels to it, but at the end of the day, it's just another hustle check. From here, it gets more into like the legal hustles you can do. I'm not even going to touch the feedland hustles, really. Oh, I'll have to because I have to explain supply. So the reason that these are not like set in stone, super ironed out, super fleshed out rules is because as the Zone Master, you're using these as inspiration for how to run and simulate these kinds of things in your game. But you ultimately get to decide what the real payouts are, how these things actually work. Because I'm insane, I like to do all my own hustles for legal jobs for different areas. So I've got a bunch here. So for the sandbox I'm running right now, I'm going to go through a couple examples of different jobs. So for the first one, we've got a fuel baron gas hand. You work at sort of a low grade fuel refinery and refueling depot. And as a gas hand, you're running around in nothing but your underwear, refilling vehicles, and just being covered in like unfiltered gas all the time. So this scales with book smarts or speed. Book smarts, because being a mechanic-minded person could help. Speed, because you got to do it fast. So let's say I've got 2 points in speed. These are legal jobs. These are the legal jobs. So maybe you spend show to have an in, or maybe you apply for work just to work in the downtime, right? So I've got 2 speed, so I'm rolling 1d6 plus 1d6 for every point in speed, so 3 for every shift. Multiplying that by $10, so that's 40, 30, 20. So I've made like $90. Sorry, you're gonna see how bad my math is. $90. Takes up 6 hours to do that hustle, and it costs me 3 conditions. So I've lost 3 condition, I've made $90. I could multiply that multiple times, but I would probably die of con loss. We could be a garment guild seamster. Remember, I have 4 reflexes. This is a reflexes scaling 1. So in my shift, we multiply that by $5. That's $20, $40, $60, $70, and then that would be $95. I take 1 stress, and it takes 12 hours, right? You get to set the parameters. Some jobs are worse than others. Some are better than others. Some of them here, this one's a blacksmith. So as a Borican blacksmith, let's say I've got 4 muscle. So I'm rolling on D10s as a blacksmith because it's more profitable. So I've got 5 D10s, and that's times $20. So that would be roughly $600 that I've just made. I lose 2 condition, but then I subtract $60 for every die I rolled as a cost of material. So I made 600, I rolled 6 dice. So I, as my operating costs, have lost 300. So I only made a $300 profit, lost 2 condition, that took 6 hours. I'm gonna now get into other hustles, because this clearly leads into how do you guys run your own legal businesses. There is rules here for running fronts. I'll get into them in a second. But if you're running your own shops or side hobbies, the Zone Master might have to come up with, what the rules are for that. So one of my characters in a campaign just bought in as a partial owner of the restaurant they've been eating at the whole time. So whoever they have working at the restaurant, they can hire someone to do this or do it themselves. Let's say they've got 4 personality, right? So they've got, it's a speed or personality working at the noodle shop. We're rolling 5 dice. So it's 1d6 plus 1d6 times $20, right? So you've made our money there. That's what? 100 plus 80 plus 40 plus 40 plus 60. So we've made $320. That is taken up 1 stress, because working in service is stressful. Ask me how I know. And we lose $25 per die rolled as our food costs, right? So that is going to be, in this case, $125. So we've made $195 profit. That takes 6 hours to do, and he has to pay $400 at the end of every session for rent on the restaurant. I had another guy be a musician, and he had ridiculous roles to perform music, and so he got hired by a studio to make soundtracks. And so for every movie, he would come up with the name of a song. He would take his die. I think he was rolling like +8 or probably even higher. We'll call it +8 for this roll. And he was getting paid $200 for every 5 rolled on a performance check, and it took him 12 hours to write a score. They would have him write a couple a week or whatever, right? They'd be okay, we need a score for this movie, right? So he would come up with the name, he would roll his thing, and he rolled a 4 +8 is a 12. So divide that by 5, right? He got over 10, so he would get $400 because he rolled a 10 +2, but whatever. If he rolled again, that's a nat 1. I guess in this case, he would have made $200 for it. This here is a 15 +8, so he's rolled like a 23, which in that case, that'll be $800, right? That was just a fun one to have as his side thing. I had another person run a restaurant called the Donkey, or it was called the Molly's Mule, I think. What's the name of the donkey again? I think it had the donkey's name. I don't know. It was a restaurant. We'll call it the Donkey. It had multiple streams of income. There was rules for the bar. There was rules for the restaurant itself. There was rules for the poker table that was invested in. There was rules for the pool table. And then there was a cost of like $1,000 at the end of every in-game week to pay protection to the mob and to pay rent and stuff like that. You can do whatever. And I might even put these up on the website just as examples so people can take a look at them. You get to define as the zone master what the hustles are. If you just want to use what's in the book, that's fine, but some of them can get out of control. If you want to selectively decide when certain rules apply, if you want to decide when you manually have to play things out, if you want to write your own hustles or whatever. But the only system that really, really matters is you are rolling 1 die plus another die equal to your relevant skills, right? It's going to take up an amount of time. It might cost you condition. It might give you stress. You might be paying per die you're rolling as an expense. Doesn't matter. You might be buying a product and then trying to make money off of that product. People might try to rob you or extort you. Who knows? But you're rolling your dice pool and you're seeing if you made money, right? That is what it is at the end of the day. Okay, now we get into supply. Supply, swag, pay data, it all follows the same system where you roll, you get an amount of that resource, and then you can either cash it in or you can add. Like for supply, if I have 3 supply, it costs, so like for swag as an example, or stolen organs or anything, right? Let's say I roll, I've got 6 swag. So I can get 6 quality 1 swag, or for every 2 swag I add, I can increase the quality, right? So 1 swag plus 2 is Q2 plus 2 is Q3. So I've got a Q3 swag and a Q1 swag. Whatever, it makes more sense if you read it, I guess. You can add them to get higher value stuff. So you can either find a bunch of low value stuff or you can find one valuable thing. For supply, this is what you get when you are looting. So if you're in the wastelands, you're exploring, or maybe even like on a mission or in a dungeon or whatever, you get rewarded supply sometimes. Your zone master can also just give you actual items, but it's more like if you just want to be like, I don't know, you find 3 supply when you're raiding this house, or roll a D3. Okay, you found 2 supply raiding this place. So 1 supply can give you D3 of any kind of scrap. Scrap is for crafting. 1 ration, which is a thing of food, 1 dose of any drug, or 1 slot of ammunition. If you want to make it more hardcore, it could be 1 of any ammunition. So it might be 1 bullet instead of 10 or 30 bullets. You might say you wouldn't find drugs here. You might say, you can't find water. You're in the desert. Doesn't matter. The thing with supply is for every point of supply you add, is it 1 point of supply? For every 2 supply. Okay, for every 2 supply, you can find a quality 1 item of any kind. And for every 2 supply, that goes up. So let's say we rolled here 2d6 supply. I've got 8 supply, right? I could find up to a quality 4 item. So maybe I found a quality 3 pistol, and then I spent 1 supply to get, 20 bullets, and then I spend another supply to get 1 day's worth of food. Again, your zone master can veto and change it and alter it. That's how supply works. There's all these other side hustles here. I'm not going to talk on them because I changed them all in the DLC, but these are just the ones for survival, like hunting, foraging, scouting, looting, things like that. This is where we get into fronts. I don't play with these rules for fronts because I find they're super basic, and as I've shown, I prefer to actually do the day-to-day managing of restaurants and stuff like that, and I'll come up with them based on the circumstances. And generally, you get enough time ahead of time where you can kind of figure it out. You're also allowed to tweak it. Like if you're like, hey, I messed up, this is way too profitable, I have to nerf it, you can do that. If you're like, oh, I messed up, this is actually, you're not making any money, I'm gonna buff it, you can do that. The cost might change based on circumstances in the game and in the world, right? But this, it just says there's a startup cost for the quality. These are for fronts specifically. So with fronts, what you do is if you want to launder money, so a quality 1 front is going to cost $30,000 to set up, and then I get a 20% return when I'm laundering. So if I have $100,000, I need to launder, I will get 20,000 back in clean money. Or if it's quality 7, it's going to cost you $250,000, but you get 140% return. So you can wash your money, and you're even going to make a bit of profit putting the money in, but maybe it takes a couple weeks before you see the money. Whatever, doesn't matter. There's also the tax part, so you lose heat if you're laundering money, which is one of the main ways to do it. Also, if you want to do legitimate investments, buy property. If you don't want to worry about money laundering, don't worry about it. It's more like if you're even doing business like behind the wall. In the zone, people aren't going to ask as many questions as long as you're paying bribes. There's also a system here that's super simple if you don't want to do the day-to-day management of a restaurant. Instead, what it is you buy a quality of business, and then you make an amount of money weekly. So quality 1 shop costs $30,000 to start, you make $1,000 a week. Quality 7 business costs $300,000 to start, you make $20,000 a week. This is just, if you don't want to do the managing and your players have a ton of money and they just want to open up a shop and have it run in the background, you can just do that. Okay, so here we get into the bail system and also trials. I'll just read through this front to back to keep it simple. So court dates. Court system is overloaded. Basically, whenever you get arrested, I usually just roll to see how long before their trial is, or I might say next session it happens, whatever. In the book, it says roll 2d6, so in 8 days you get your trial. You can say it's more time if you want, less time. Doesn't. Up to you. The next is bail. Okay, so the way the bail works is once you've been arrested, you are stuck in a detainment center or a jail. These are usually very violent, very terrible places. They're bad in our world. They're even worse in the apocalypse. You don't want to get stabbed. Maybe you have enemies with a local gang and you're worried they're going to get you killed in the jail. Maybe someone wants you assassinated and you're worried they're going to hire a hitman in prison to kill you. Maybe you spend show and you know a guard and it's going to be easy. But you want to be out. You don't want to be in jail. You can go to a bail bonds company, or you can pay your bail yourself. You can pay your bail yourself if you want. Generally, the rule is in-game, your bail is $1,000 for every year you are facing in prison. If you don't want to manage that, you can just, Zone Master can just say an arbitrary number. For the purposes of this scenario, it's $9,000. And he's stuck in jail for 7 days. So if he goes to a bail bonds company, they will front the $9,000. You will owe them 10%, compounded weekly or at the end of every session, depending on how you run it. I'll get into that in a separate video, I guess. But yeah, in this case, it could be $9,000. Your debt would be, you know, $900 for the first compound, et cetera, et cetera. If you beat the case, or if you go to trial and get convicted, as long as you don't violate the terms of your bail, you don't have to pay the actual bail bond you took out. You only pay the interest on that debt, right? But if you violate your bail, the bail is seized by the government, and you then will have to pay the full debt to the bail bonds company if you mess up. So don't get arrested for a separate crime while out on bail, otherwise you will be in debt a ton of money, or if you fronted the bail yourself, you won't get it back. Pre-trial evidence. Okay, so this is where we get into the actual stuff of like cases, right? So we talked about heat actions in a previous video, but what are they arresting you for? This is where we track evidence. Like everything else in the game, the quality of the state's case is on a quality of 1 to 7, right? 1 through 7. Generally, the rule I do is on a 10 heat action, you are now wanted with a quality 1 case, and for every 2 additional heat you spend, you can increase the quality of the case by 1. If you don't want to, you know, have the police go after them with a low-level case, you can say, okay, the state is going to spend 4 of your heat, or so you might say, lose 4 heat, and your player's going to go, uh-oh, and then nothing happens, and they're like, what's going on? Did they wire my phone? Are they following me? Is someone around me? Like, are they informing? And you might, you know, behind your little ZM screen or whatever, have it where, okay, now the quality, they have 2 more evidence against this player. So eventually, when they are wanted, when they are indicted with a crime, it's going to be maybe a Q3 case, whatever, right? You spend heat to increase the level of evidence that they have. When you are going to trial, you are rolling your cheat death. And there's 2 ways to do it. We always usually do it as a cheat death roll. You can also do it as an opposed skill check if you would rather, but generally the rule is you are rolling your cheat death, so a +1 for every 2 points in personality, and a -1 for every, you know, amount of evidence. So if they have a Q3 case, right, we have a -3. If I have 4 personality, I have a +2 to my cheat death. So I'm rolling D20 -1 to see if I go to jail for 9 years, which is effectively the end of my character, right? There are lawyers who you can hire, and the quality of the lawyer you hire increases your bonus by 1 for every point. So let's say we got a Q2 lawyer. So we're actually rolling a +1 because I hired a lawyer for $5,000. I rolled an 11 +1, that's a 12. I beat my case, I get to go back to committing capers. Here I rolled a 7 +1, that's an 8. I've gone to jail, right? You can do, there's a system here for appeals. You can legacy point so that you don't actually get convicted or you get released on some crazy evidence, right? You could do an opposed skill check where you're actually rolling with your legal defense against the result of the prosecution. It's kind of up to your table, but once you've been caught, you need to get lawyer money, because this is effectively just, think of getting caught and going to trial as basically the same as when in combat, when you get downed. There's a decent chance that your character is done. And so you want to be careful with that. It can be scary, it can be tricky. It's also, you know, how you're kind of punishing and corralling your players by trying to get them to not leave evidence everywhere and pull off these insane crimes that they're barely getting away with. Okay, so for the last section here, we've got turf wars. This is the neighborhood system. So I'm going to do an entire video, or possibly even an entire series, where I make a location for Geto Ratz, like a city or a neighborhood. And I want to eventually do like collaborative ones if people ever play this game, right? But This is essentially the system I use to make neighborhoods and then control or simulate who controls neighborhoods and, you know, the changing of control of a neighborhood between different groups and factions. So in this, yeah, so we'll just get into it. So the first thing, you decide when you're coming up with a neighborhood. Let's say for this neighborhood, we're going to call it, we'll call this neighborhood Crow's Rest for the purpose of this argument. And this could be applied to like towns or villages if you're running them at a lower level. Like a city might be made up of multiple neighborhoods. A town might just be one, right? So it can be a good way if you're doing like a more open world kind of game where like maybe one town has 2 neighborhoods. Maybe this village is only just 1 neighborhood. Maybe the city has 7 neighborhoods, right? So it's worth kind of noting that. The first thing you're going to decide is wealth. Wealth measures the income distribution in the neighborhood. A character can only... Here it says a character can only roll as many dice per hour as the wealth of the neighborhood. Alternatively, if you're running it the other way, it could be the bonus to your rolls when you're rolling in a neighborhood. Kind of depends how you're simulating that. If a neighborhood has more wealth than population, it is generally a wealthy one. If the wealth is lower than the population, it is a poor one. If it's even, it's about average. This is how much the wealth is distributed throughout an area, how much access the people of this neighborhood have to the wealth that is being generated here. The next one is order. Order is measures kind of like the control of whether it's a syndicate, a corporation, a political party, or just the police. Maybe it's a militia, maybe it's vigilantes. But it's the idea that there is somebody enforcing law and order in this area. It's not totally lawless. If you commit a crime, will people stop you? Will the police be able to respond in time? Are people even going to care? Are you going to get attacked going to this neighborhood, or is it a safe place? So order, if it is higher than population, it is like a super militant, strict area. If it's lower than population, it's kind of whatever. If it's like 1, then the place is basically lawless. When you're rolling your police response, I like to roll 1d6 for every point in order in the zone. On a 6, the police show up. So let's say this area is an order of 5. You get into a big shootout. I've rolled 5d6. None of them are on a 6. Maybe the police aren't coming. I could say that again. That's 2 6s, so maybe a good amount of cops are coming, right? Just an easy way to simulate it in an area with 1 order. Hey, the cops responded. That's crazy. Okay, they aren't coming today. You can re-roll it if things escalate or something, but whatever. The last one here, as you can probably have guessed, is population. This is the population density of the neighborhood. Every point of population represents how many characters, or in this case, organizations, can hustle there per day. Multiple crews competing for the same territory will have to split the population between them. So let's say we're in Crow's Rest. Let's say it's got a wealth of 3, an order of 3, and a population of 4. So it's got a very big population. It is okay. It is still like, you know, maybe on the poorer side. Like 3 out of every 4 people is doing all right. There's a good amount of wealth here, good amount of work here, but everyone's still just trying to get by. Very working class, kind of. And an order of 3 with a population of 4, there's a decent police presence. Maybe the syndicate has their own patrols and stuff they're running, right? It's an all right neighborhood as far as the zone goes. Let's say you and another hooligan are competing for control of the territory. So there's population 4. Maybe it's split between 2 gangs. Each of those gangs controls 2 of the population. That means you can have 2 dealers on either side who get the wealth bonus. In this case, it would be plus 3d6. I don't know if any of these numbers are making sense to you. I'm just explaining kind of like, yeah, like this is how you would break a neighborhood down. This is how it could be divided up. I'll do a whole video on this kind of thing pretty soon. But the idea is if you're competing with other groups, you get the wealth bonus if you control a population. If you control all the population, you get all the wealth bonuses for all your people. If you control none of the population, then you won't get the wealth bonus. You might even be penalized, right? But that's just kind of how you measure who controls how much of the neighborhood. Then there's just additional things that are good to add. So ruling faction, who are the most powerful people in this area? Who controls the employment? Who are the big powerful figures? Is it a neighborhood that's run basically by a gang? Is it a neighborhood run by like a union? Is it a neighborhood controlled by a big corporation? Up to you, right? Economy. What does this neighborhood do? Is it a port district where everyone works at the docks, or in shipping, or maybe in fishing? Is it a nightlife district where there's a bunch of like makeshift movie theaters and gambling dens and clubs and restaurants and stuff like that? Is it like a corporate area where it's like offices and that kind of thing? You don't have to do a ton of detail, but just kind of like, what do people do here? Notable locations, it could be clubs, certain, housing areas like apartments or stuff like that. Controlling these might give you different bonuses, or it might just be for flavor. They might be noteworthy locations, right? And then here is just the little shifting cities section. It just says as you do different things, or as different things develop in the area, those numbers, wealth, order, population, the faction, the economy, the locations, could all change. So in one of my games, the party were paid to light an entire neighborhood on fire. And that neighborhood was left a lawless, depopulated, impoverished husk. There was nothing there. Everyone left. And so all these surrounding neighborhoods, their population went up because all that population from that area... Dang, I gotta go to the gym. I gotta hurry. All that population from that area left. In the game I'm running right now, they just ended a lockdown where no supplies were allowed into the zone for like over a month, and so everybody was starving, and the wealth in the whole area, multiple neighborhoods, all dropped by one. So things will change. The last one we've got is faction influence milestones. You can track how powerful a faction is using influence. I typically don't... You could do influence. You could also, if you prefer like blades, you could do like counters or clocks. But it's essentially the idea that as your party does different things, it will impact different factions, and they might rise or decline in power as you're influencing them. And so this is just saying you could have different events happen. So let's say a faction starts with an influence of 5. You could say if they get down to influence 2, maybe they break into 2 different factions, or maybe they get to influence 7, they declare war on another faction. And as you're running missions for or against them, their influence is going to be going, up and down, right? And then the last one here we have are parties. Parties are just a way to have fun, but also you can lose stress, you can get show. Originally, you gain show mostly by throwing parties. Now I give it out a lot more for roleplay. You also get it for reputation. But throwing parties is just a fun way to kind of celebrate, meet NPCs, roleplay, but then you also get show, stress loss, even get condition back for throwing the different parties. Okay, I feel bad having to end this episode so fast. I've never been cut off like this, but I don't want to be late to go to the gym. All of that basically to say, this is just treat this as inspiration. You don't need to be married to these rules. I certainly am not. I almost never use hustles as written. I just use them as inspiration. If a player says, hey, I want to do credit card fraud, and you don't know how credit card fraud works, these rules are just to kind of help you. Okay, how do I simulate that? How do I simulate stealing a car? How do I simulate, doing these home invasions? How do I know what loot are they going to find? Use these as tools, and then use them to build systems that are fun and fit in your game. If it doesn't make sense for someone to do something, don't let them. If you don't think it makes sense for a certain thing to take 12 hours, if a person has 1 hour, so you divide their dice pool by the amount of hours as opposed to it being a 6, whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever makes sense for your table. Obviously, these are just the tools I use to create my own hustles and rules and allow people to engage in the game in that way. Thanks again for watching. And the next video is going to be fun because that is the weapon chapter. So, see, even Kevin's excited. See you in the next one. Later.